So, about 5 minutes into recording this, I realized I wasn't recording. So, here we go again, guys. You're listening to Let's Talk Mental Health, real conversations the system doesn't have. Around here, we tell the truth about mental health, trauma, addiction recovery, relationships, and what it actually feels like to try and hold your life together when your nervous system is done. I'm Jamie. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in Christian counseling of substance abuse and addictive disorders. I completed my internship for my addiction counseling license at Arizona State Prison. I worked in addiction counseling for about 4 years before I had a midlife crisis while taking care of my grandmother and decided that I wanted to write full time. Somehow I stumbled onto TikTok, and now here we are recording a podcast. I just want to be very clear about a couple things. I am no longer a licensed addiction counselor, but if I was a licensed addiction counselor, I couldn't be your addiction counselor because I'm just some random person on the internet. I'm also a mother in recovery, a mental health advocate, a harm reduction advocate, a TikTok agency owner, podcaster, grandma, dog mom, cat mom, a million different things. So, welcome. I hope you enjoy what we're going to talk about now and in the future. I just want to explain that I have been on both sides of the conversation about recovery and mental health. I've been on the side as the person needing services, and I've been on the side as the person providing services. I also know what it's like to try and rebuild after my body finally said no more. Before we get into today's episode, I want to be really clear about what this show is and what it isn't. This podcast is based on lived experience, psychological insight, and real conversations. It's not formal treatment. Again, I am not your therapist. I'm not here to diagnose you. We don't do armchair diagnosis here. I'm not here to prescribe anything. I don't have any kind of prescriber privileges. And I'm not here to replace professional care. Nothing you hear today is a substitute for therapy, medical advice, or crisis support. It's education, reflection, and storytelling. It's meant to give you language, help you understand or maybe identify things that you feel from an educational standpoint. We're here to give you maybe some validation, but we are not here to replace the help you already have or help that you might need. If you find yourself in crisis, feeling unsafe, thinking about harming yourself or somebody else, we are going to ask that you please treat that as a real and urgent issue. In the United States, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or you can contact local emergency services. If you are listening from somewhere else, reach out to a trusted crisis line, hospital, or trusted professional where you are. You deserve support that is about you in real time, not just a podcast episode. Take what lands, leave what doesn't, and listen in a way that feels as safe as possible for you today. You're allowed to pause, come back later, or skip an episode if it becomes too much. Okay, now that we've got housekeeping out of the way, let's get into today's conversation. Today, we're talking about what emotional exhaustion actually feels like. Not the cute, I'm tired, I need a self-care day version. Not the Instagram quote about rest and recharge. I'm talking about the kind of exhaustion where your brain, your body, and your heart are all quietly saying, we can't keep doing this. And the world is still asking, hey, can you just do this one more thing? Emotional exhaustion is that point where you've been carrying so much for so long that even the small things feel heavy. You're still moving, still showing up, but inside you feel like a phone stuck on 1% battery. No matter how long you leave it on the charger, never quite hits 100 again. If you've ever thought, I don't even know how to explain how tired I am, this episode is for you. We're going to talk about how emotional exhaustion shows up in your body, in your thoughts, in your relationships, and why it's not about being weak or overly sensitive. We'll also talk about what you can realistically do when you can't just drop your whole life and disappear for 6 months. So let's start with what emotional exhaustion really is beneath those buzzwords. So, what is emotional exhaustion? When I say emotional exhaustion, I'm not just talking about being tired. Tired is, I didn't sleep well last night. Exhausted is, I've had a long week. Emotional exhaustion is, my brain and my heart don't have anything left to give, but life is still demanding more from me. This is what happens when your nervous system has been in survival mode for a long time, months, years, maybe longer, trying to juggle trauma and grief, money stress, caregiving, recovery, toxic relationships, work pressure, parenting, content creation, or some combination of all of those things. For a lot of people, emotional exhaustion builds quietly. It's not just one event, it's drip, drip, drip. It starts with, I'm just tired. I just need a weekend. And then one day you realize the weekends just don't touch it. Vacations don't fix it. Time off doesn't magically refill the tank. Emotional exhaustion is when the demand on your emotional system has been higher than your capacity for so long that your body and mind start shutting down functions to protect you. You are not broken. Your system is just trying to keep you alive in a situation that might feel unsustainable. And the tricky part? Emotionally exhausted people often still look fine. They are the high functioning ones. They're the ones still answering emails, still taking care of kids, still showing up online, still doing caretaking or community work. Inside, though, there's a quiet voice going, I can't keep this up. And that voice keeps getting ignored. And I'm just going to speak honestly. There was a time in the last few weeks, actually, where I was dealing with a toxic friendship and the encroachment and the monopolization of my time was so gradual that I didn't even notice that this friendship was the reason I was stressed the fuck out, couldn't finish my to-do list, couldn't get anything done, and it was interfering with, as a business owner, revenue generating activities. That's my most recent time that I can relate to being just absolutely exhausted, feeling burned out, and still trying to be a mom, a wife, a grandma, a dog mom, all of those things. And I kept telling people, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I wasn't fine. And I guess that's why the last few and the next few episodes are just about being emotionally burned out. It is okay to just admit that you're tired. It's okay to just take a nap if you have to and you have the time. I realized I was emotionally exhausted when I finally said I've had enough. I said I have had enough. I cut off this friendship. It was very impulsive, but it was a very good impulsive thing to do. And in the reflection of the next few days, I realized I'm emotionally exhausted and this has me burned out. And I'm still kind of recovering from that. And we are over a month out from that incident. Let's talk about how emotional exhaustion can feel in your body. Buddy, chill out, please. Let's start with your body because your body usually starts screaming before your brain will admit what's going on. Emotional exhaustion often shows up physically long before we are able to identify it. You can walk through these. Your body may feel heavy, like everything takes more effort than it should. Getting out of bed, taking a shower, starting tasks, none of it is impossible. It just feels like you're moving through mud. Your muscles live in a constant state of clench, jaw, shoulders, back. You might not even notice how tight you are until something hurts or someone touches your shoulders and you realize how rigid you've been. You feel wired but tired. Your body is buzzing. Your heart might race. Your mind is busy, but you're just feeling exhausted. Sleep becomes weird. You might sleep a lot and still wake up tired, or you might struggle to fall asleep because your brain won't shut up. Either way, you're not feeling rested. Headaches, stomach aches, mystery pains. Your body is carrying what your brain doesn't have room to process. Emotional exhaustion can make your body feel way older than you actually are. You might catch yourself saying things like, I'm too old for this, even if you're in your 20s or 30s, because that's how everything feels. You might notice little moments like you're sitting in your car in your driveway, not because you like the car, but because you can't find the energy to transition from one role to the next. You may find yourself standing in the kitchen, staring at the same cabinet, completely blank on what to do next. You may find yourself taking longer showers, not because it's relaxing, but because it's the only place you're not actively doing something for someone else. None of this is laziness. This is your nervous system hitting its limits. It's your nervous system telling you you're at capacity. Now let's talk about your mind. Mentally, emotional exhaustion can feel like someone turned the brightness down on your ability to think clearly and care about things. Your thoughts might feel foggy or slow. You might need to reread the same sentence 3 times. You open an app and you forget why. Or if you're like me, you walk to the kitchen and then can't remember what you went in there for. You walk into another room and can't remember what you needed. You struggle with decision fatigue. You have a difficult time choosing what to eat, what to wear, what tasks to start, what email to answer. It can all feel like too much. It can all feel very overwhelming. You start living in autopilot mode, just doing the next thing in front of you without really feeling connected to it. Your brain feels overcrowded. You're constantly mentally tracking tasks, people, problems, and yet you still feel like you're dropping balls. The internal dialogue of emotional exhaustion is harsh. Why can't I focus? What is wrong with me? Everyone else is handling this. I should be able to handle it too. I'm so behind I'll never catch up is the one I relate to the most. For 6 months, I had a to-do list that it just felt like it was growing longer and longer and longer. And I was struggling to even finish a few tasks on it. Thankfully, not still in that place, but I did start feeling like I was never going to catch up. You may find yourself talking about your life like it's a case study. You might be able to list your traumas, your diagnoses, your responsibilities like bullet points, but you feel disconnected from your own story. It's like you're narrating your life from the outside instead of living it. You know you're not okay, but you're also really good at convincing yourself that you can push through just a little longer. I'll rest after this project. I'll slow down when the kids are older. I just need to make it through this month. The goal line keeps moving and your brain keeps carrying more than it was ever meant to carry alone. We may find ourselves feeling really overloaded with work or working 2 jobs or working and then going home and being a parent, having to help with homework. If you're in the creator space, may just feel like you're getting overloaded. You constantly have to come up with ideas and create, and you have to deal with trolls. And if you're anything like me, you struggle just to put out one episode a week. But, if you're over in the TikTok space or the YouTube space, right, you might want to post every day. And some days it's a struggle to get those things done. Even if you're batch creating, you might be struggling with coming up with ideas to batch create, right? You may find that the amount of work you have to do just keeps adding and adding and adding, and it might leave you feeling frustrated. And if you're not enjoying it, that might make you more tired, right? Now let's talk about how emotional exhaustion can feel emotionally, right? We just talked about how it feels mentally. Let's talk about the emotional aspect of that. And this is where a lot of people get confused, because emotional exhaustion doesn't always look like what we picture when we think of struggling. People imagine constant crying, visible sadness, dramatic breakdowns. Emotional exhaustion often looks a lot quieter and honestly a lot more confusing. You may feel numbness. You know that something should make you sad, happy, angry, or excited, but you just feel nothing. It just doesn't land. You may feel irritable. Your fuse is shorter. Small things that never used to bother you now feel huge. You snap more. You sigh more. You feel more annoyed at everyone and everything. You may notice emotional flatness. Your life feels like it's happening in grayscale. Things you used to be passionate about don't hit the same. And then we have emotional avoidance. You don't have the bandwidth for big talks. You shut down or say, I don't know, because even trying to find the words feels exhausting. There's a version of emotional exhaustion where the main feeling is, I don't care anymore. And that could be terrifying if you've always been the one who cares deeply about everything. You may catch yourself ghosting people you actually love because responding feels like another emotional task, pulling away from hobbies or passions that used to light you up. Maybe another thing you experience. Feeling guilty because you're not as present with your kids, your partner, your friends, or in your community. But the guilt that you're feeling about that doesn't magically produce energy. Emotional exhaustion can feel like your heart has flipped into low power mode. It's still there, it's still beating, but it's not broadcasting at full strength. For me, emotional exhaustion can look like I'm just a crab and I'll be tired, I'll want to sleep, and I can't nap. I get the wired but tired feeling. Um, Emotional exhaustion can look like I see you calling, but I'm ignoring that call because I just don't have the energy to even talk to you right now. Even if it's a pleasant conversation, I don't have that energy. I'm just simply trying to discuss or explain how it may present, but this isn't something that we should be striving for because it leads to burnout, right? We should be actually striving to find that balance, whatever that balance looks like for us in our lives. I just want to kind of educate people on how you can name those things and identify what is physical, what is emotional, what is mental when it comes to exhaustion. And are you feeling all three of these or just one of these? These are just things to think about. Now, let's move on to how emotional exhaustion can show up in roles and relationships. When you're emotionally exhausted, it doesn't just live inside of you, it impacts how you show up in every role you carry: parent, partner, friend, worker, creator, caregiver, advocate. The complicated part is other people might not see it. They might just feel the distance, the shorter fuse, the cancellations. These may be things you feel without you realizing that you're struggling. This is your nervous system trying to cope, trying to give you space, trying to give you breathing room. As a parent or caregiver, you might do the tasks. You might make the meals, schedule the appointments, help with the homework, you know, drive the kids everywhere, but feel like you're just operating in survival mode, or it almost feels like rote, right? Where you're just going through the motions, but you're checked out. You might feel like you're doing the bare minimum to just keep people alive. That doesn't mean you are, it just might feel like it. And you may even be struggling with, like, I love them, but I am emotionally dehydrated. Like, I love them, but I need a break. I feel like I'm not serving them in the best way that I could be. As a partner, you might be struggling to be present. Conversations may feel draining. You may zone out. You may argue more easily or shut down faster. You may find yourself fighting over the smallest things with your partner. As a friend, you might cancel plans, delay replying, or even avoid calls, because even good connections feel like more energy than you have. And that's kind of the example I just gave. Like, once I'm emotionally drained, sometimes even responding to a text message is too much for me. If you're an employee, or somebody who works, or a student, or a creator, or whatever it is that you do to make a living every month, even if you're maybe at home and disabled and you just have to do daily tasks, right? You may keep hitting deadlines, but feel like you're working on an empty tank. You may find that your creativity is feeling forced, or things you used to enjoy feel like chores. And if you've always been the strong one, the one who has it together, the helper, the listener, basically the glue that holds everything together, maybe the family mediator like me, the emotional exhaustion may also make you feel like you're failing at your role. And you might think, I'm dropping the ball. I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good partner. I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good creator. I'm not a good leader. Or people are going to think I can't handle this. Don't 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 let those thoughts get to you. Don't let those negative thoughts put you in a pity party mode, okay? Because the reality is you've probably been operating above your actual capacity for a long time, because sometimes all of those things start gradually. Like how I was talking earlier about how all of a sudden my time was being monopolized and encroached upon, and I didn't notice how gradual it was, because it just started with one thing and then another and then another. And then all of a sudden, 4 months later, I'm like, what the fuck? So, emotional exhaustion is what it looks like when your system finally starts saying, we can't keep doing this for everyone without anyone really doing this for us. We can't keep doing this for everyone without us doing it for ourselves. And this can feel especially real for people in recovery, especially because with recovery, it can be sometimes minute by minute. You know, this could be a struggle for veterans or even creators who are trying to hold it together in front of the public, right? Their audience. They're trying to keep it together emotionally for whatever reason. I know I talk about creators a lot, but that's because I'm in the creator space and it's new to me. So some of these things that I'm learning, I'm just now learning. And it is what it is. Let's talk about why this is not a weakness or something that makes you too sensitive. Okay. And I want to make sure that we have a little clarity on this. Emotional exhaustion is not a character flaw. And I keep reiterating this for a reason. Because sometimes we've been conditioned to think that because we can't do something or we're at capacity, we are the problem. We are not. Now, we might be the problem in taking on too much, but that doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. Okay? So, emotional exhaustion is not a character flaw. Pull out your notebook, take notes. Emotional exhaustion is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you're weak. It is not proof that you're dramatic or that you're bad at adulting. Emotional exhaustion is often the natural outcome of living in circumstances that demand more emotional labor than one person can sustainably give. What are some of those circumstances? I am so glad you asked. Because, again, like I always try to do, I'm going to come to the table with some examples. Long-term trauma and survival mode. Chronic financial stress and instability. Ongoing caregiving for kids, partners, parents, or community. I want to talk about caregiving for a second. If you are somebody who is caring for an elderly family member, in their end years of life, if they have dementia or they struggle with mobility, first of all, you're a saint. Okay? You're a saint, especially if you're doing it and you're kind and you're not like beating your grandma. And I say that because that happens a lot. And if you're not exploiting them, okay? If you're exploiting them or beating them, then you're not a saint, okay? But all other people, you're a saint. And I say this because we took care of my grandmother with dementia from 2021, no, from December of 2020 to September of 2023 when she passed away. Might have been 2024. I think it was 2024. And it wasn't easy. She lived with me for 3 months. And after 3 months, I said, I know you don't want to go in a nursing home, but I cannot handle this anymore. And I had to put her in a nursing home. And she actually did really well there once she got used to it after she cussed me out. But even having her in a nursing home didn't take away the burden of caregiving. I still had to make sure her bills were paid, that she got her hygiene needs, that we went and visited her, that we did, we made medical decisions if she ended up in the hospital, needed glasses, needed dental work, whatever it was. And I was exhausted. Even after she no longer lived with us, my husband and I, we talk about that sometimes, and how even though she only lived with us for 3 months, right? From December of 2020 to March of 2021, we are still recovering from that years later. We had a routine, and her just being here for those 3 months messed up our routine so bad that we still haven't really found our way back to the way things were. That's why I say you're a saint if you're a caregiver. And those are roles where you can feel burned out as a mom, a parent, a sibling, or even just caregiving in the community. Caregiving's hard, especially when it comes to people who maybe are not able to care for themselves. Okay, Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's get back on track. So, other ways, other circumstances that could be the natural outcome of emotional exhaustion from the circumstances is always being the strong one in your family or friend group. I get tired of being looked at like I'm the strong one. Sometimes it's like I don't want to be the strong one. I want to be the one having the meltdown or the breakdown. Don't mind my cat. This is Bella. She's about to grace you with her presence. Apparently, she's my assistant again today. So every time I record, she feels like she needs to be all up in here. So yeah, there you go. She says, look at my butt. Look at my butt. All right. Emotionally abusive or manipulative environments can also be environments that cause emotional exhaustion. That's literally what led me that's probably the worst experience I ever had was emotional abuse and manipulation. I feel like those were more exhausting for me than any other situation I've been in. And I've been in some pretty shitty situations. And I think that this is one of those things that is very nuanced in the sense that, especially when it comes to DV, this is why people stay. I am lucky that my situation was not in my household. But I'll tell you what, sometimes you don't even see how badly you're being manipulated until after you're outside this situation. And then you just feel angry and dumb. Hey, Bella, can you at least say hi if you're going to show everyone your butt? Come on, Bella. She's trying to force me to pet her. Okay. Holding public emotional labor. Being somebody in the public space, whether it's a celebrity, a politician, a community leader, a supervisor, a creator, some sort of helper. These all can have emotional labor because it's in public, right? And especially nowadays, if you are almost expected to never make mistakes, right? And I remember saying from when I was a kid that I feel like is more relevant today than it's probably ever been. And that is, you can do 1,000 things right, but people will remember you for the one thing that you did wrong. And I feel like in the age of the internet, that is so true, right? That is so, so true. And I feel like we hold people that we see in public under a more critical lens. And at the end of the day, there are people too. This is by no means justifying anybody's shitty behavior, okay? But I do think, like, imagine having everything you ever did used against you all the time. When people say that you're too sensitive or you just need to toughen up, they are usually ignoring the sheer volume of what you're holding on to, what you're dealing with, what you're going through. Emotional exhaustion is your body and your mind saying, we've hit cap. We have hit cap. We are at our limit. My cup cannot run over. My cup is full, right? You're not emotionally exhausted because there's something wrong with you. You're not emotionally exhausted because you're lazy. You're not emotionally exhausted because you are too sensitive or you can't handle things, okay? You're emotionally exhausted because you've been forced to carry more than what was meant for one nervous system with less support than you deserve. And you've probably done it for longer than anyone should have to. And I want you to think about hustle culture, toxic positivity, and even some parts of the mental health system that only respond once there's a crisis. And that's probably one of my most frustrating things about the mental health system. And some of that ties to insurance issues and not necessarily the system. Still a systemic problem, but I want to make sure that we're not unfairly crediting somebody, right? So it does vary from place to place, but it's frustrating that they only talk about prevention after the crisis, right? We need to be proactive, not reactive. However, what we see often is that people have to completely break down before they get the help they need. And it's frustrating, right? If somebody wants to go inpatient and they say, I need to go inpatient, I'm not okay, but they don't say, I'm suicidal, sometimes they'll be turned away because they're not suicidal. And I feel like if you have the insight to say, I need help and I need to be in this place, that should hold more credence than it does. And I know part of that ties down to some people will say that just to have a place to stay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And even then, in those situations, we could give them resources, right? Preventive resources. We don't have to just turn them away. And I think that's part of the problem too. I also think that mental health needs to be more accessible for everyone. If you're not rich and you're not on Medicaid and you're in the middle class, sometimes it's harder, right? Because you have to pay out of pocket or you have a high deductible from your insurance. Or if you're like me, you're somewhere rural where nobody will take your insurance. And so you just get what you get. Maybe don't, the systems don't always work for us the way they should, right? We shouldn't have to crash and burn to get help. And I think that's part of what leads to us taking on too much, right? Because we see this person doing it and that person doing it, but we don't know what their struggles are internally either. Let's talk about what to actually do with this knowledge that we have now. I'm not going to tell you quit your job, abandon your responsibilities, disappear from the internet, go live on a mountain. Most of us can't do that, right? I know I can't do that. I probably could if I sold everything I own, but I'm not ready for that. But we can talk about small, real shifts that you can make while still living the life you have. And I think this starts with naming it. And you guys are going to hear me talk about this a lot. We have to name things, to name our emotions. We've got to name how we feel. We've got to identify. That really comes down to identifying. I'm angry because, not I'm so frustrated. I am angry because XYZ event. Okay? So I want you to think about how, if this is you, how you can name it. All right? Your first step to naming it is going to be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Are you really just a little bit tired? Are you really just a little bit stressed? Or are you a lot tired and a lot stressed? And how can I say that in a way that others understand or I understand? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Okay? You can say, I am emotionally exhausted. This may feel really dramatic at first, especially if you've been minimizing your experience for years. If you've learned to adapt to living in this state of mind, this may feel dramatic for you. But naming it accurately is a way of stopping the self-gaslighting, right? Because we do that too, right? I should do better. I could be better. I should be able to handle this. Let me just say, you're allowed to be tired in a way that sleep alone is not a solution for. Okay? You're allowed to just be emotionally tired. And I want you to say this out loud right now. Yes, I am going to be cheesy. I am allowed to be tired in a way that sleep alone does not fix. We're going to say it 2 more times. I am allowed to be tired in a way that sleep alone doesn't fix. I am allowed to be tired in a way that sleep alone doesn't fix. Jamie, why are you repeating it? Because I really needed to sink in. Because I think the more you say it, the more you're going to understand, oh my God, I am allowed to be tired in a way that sleep alone doesn't fix it. Okay? Next thing I want you to do is find a safe person that you can tell your truth to. Find a safe person. It could be a therapist, it could be a partner, but it needs to be somebody you can trust to be safe with emotionally. Okay? And I want you to share whatever it is that you're feeling. And I'm going to give you examples. I'm really emotionally drained right now. I'm still functioning, but I am not okay. You don't have to full on trauma dump. You don't have to come with solutions. You're just releasing and acknowledging that you're exhausted. And you're letting somebody exist with you in the truth of where you are instead of putting on a performance and saying, I'm fine for everyone. Okay? The next thing I want you to do is shrink the extras. Shrink the extras. Emotional exhaustion is not the season to stack your plate higher. What do I mean by that? Well, say no to things that are optional, even if you feel guilty, but don't feel guilty. Okay? Don't feel guilty. Say no to things that are optional. No is a complete sentence, and you do not have to justify your no. Okay? Let some non-emergency tasks be late or be imperfect. Or are they even necessary since they're not an emergency task? If you need to drop your performative obligations that are about keeping up appearances, not true connection. If you're a creator or a creative, take some time to emotionally recover. You don't have to always be on, whether it's writing, being on the internet as an influencer, an artist, whatever it is okay to just say, I need a few days for myself. I want you to think of it like this. It's back to the phone scenario, right? You're putting your life in low power mode wherever you can. So you can protect the parts of you that are non-negotiable, your safety, your basic needs, your relationships, the things that actually nourish you. Those are more important. And then next, I want you to build tiny nervous system breaks into your day. When you are emotionally exhausted, giant self-care plans can feel impossible. I want you to think smaller, a lot smaller. You can take 2 minutes in the bathroom to breathe. You can do this with the door locked if you need to. You can drink a glass of water. Pay attention to the sensation in your body. What do you feel? You can take a few deep exhales in your car before you get out. You put your phone down for 5 minutes and look out a window. Put your phone down for 5 minutes. Take a walk. Now, none of these things are going to fix your entire life, but it is going to give your body the break it needs. It tells your body, I see you. You get a little space, even in the chaos. Over time, building on these small moments might create just enough space for you to make bigger decisions with more clarity. And of course, last but not least, if none of these things work, or if you're just so overwhelmed that even with all of these things, you need guidance, or you want guidance because I'm just some random person on the internet talking from lived experience and not armchair diagnosing you. Seek support. Seek support. Get a counselor, get a therapist. If that's not accessible to you, just understand that you can still find support systems that don't require money and they don't require you to perform looking strong. Okay. So, therapy or counseling with someone who gets trauma and burnout would be good. But you also have the options of support groups, recovery meetings, peer space, places where people speak honestly about these kind of things. And then we always have your safe friend. Were you able to identify a safe friend or a safe community where you're allowed to be messy, quiet, or not on? The key is you don't have to be the helper in every room you walk into. You're allowed to be the one who needs help too. If you've been listening and thinking, this is uncomfortably accurate, or I feel personally attacked, I want you to know you're not alone and you're not crazy. And I'm so sorry you're burned out. If any of this is relatable in the present, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Emotional exhaustion is not a personality flaw. Again, it is a sign that you've been surviving in overdrive. You probably adapted to overdrive for so long that it's just natural now. You are allowed to be tired. Say it again. I am allowed to be tired. You're allowed to say, I can't do this the way I've been doing it. You're allowed to need more support than you have. My hope is that this episode gave you language or helps you identify what you've been carrying, maybe even in silence, and that you can take this into your therapy or into a conversation with somebody you trust or into a journal or even just into your own awareness and insight as you move throughout the day. If someone came to mind while you were listening, the person who's always fine, always strong, always there for everybody, maybe share this episode with them. Because sometimes people don't realize how exhausted they are until they hear their experience reflected back to them. You know, I didn't know how exhausted I was until after I was able to remove the thing that was causing me the exhaustion. And if you want more real conversations the systems don't have, you can follow or subscribe to Let's Talk Mental Health so you don't miss upcoming episodes on high functioning burnout, toxic dynamics, recovery, what it really looks like to rebuild a life from the inside out. I have a couple of episodes coming up with special guests, and I can't wait for you guys to hear them. So today, if you do nothing else, I hope you let yourself acknowledge, I'm tired in a way that sleep alone cannot fix. And that is important. That matters. And I want you to remember, your exhaustion is not a moral failure. It is a message your body is trying to send your brain. All right, guys, I have one last ask. Okay. If you like what I'm putting out, smash the subscribe button for me, please. And if you're on Spotify or iTunes, please rate my podcast or give me a review. Helps me out immensely. You are all amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day.